All right, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Motor Vehicle Subcommittee. Today is the 25th of January. It's 5:02 in the afternoon. February, thank you.
Ooh, don't do that. It's just
Would you prefer I say March, right?
something like that.
So
47 days to go.
I'm sorry?
47 days to go.
47 days to go. We have 6 bills on the agenda today. I'd like to start with House Bill 44. That is the Clean Cars Act. We worked really hard at the very end of last year on this bill, and then COVID hit and things just kind of came to a screeching halt. So with that said, I have been working with a variety of folks on the bill to just try to find a reasonable source of funding and some reasonable amendments because this space is moving so quickly, as everybody heard. So I think what I'd like to do tonight is just kind of talk through things like we did at the very end of last session and just kind of get everybody on the same page if everybody's good with it. And then maybe Patrick can draft up those amendments. I know he's been working on some of them. And then hopefully pass it next week if everybody agrees. So with that said, I'll just kind of start off with a funding source. The bill originally had a lot more money in it, but just given the circumstances with the pandemic and the fund that it was coming out of, after talking with the chairs of appropriation, the chair of ECM, and our chair, Chair Barve, the decision was kind of made from a little bit higher that we needed to scale down on the monies that we're going to put into this. And so those chairs got together and I think worked through the budget to find out what we could do on the bill. And what it came out with was an initial $12 million to pay all the back people, all the people that have already purchased their cars that are waiting in line. That will completely clear out the backlog, which is very significant because we haven't done anything in a couple of years. And then instead of doing up to $26 million a year, it'll just be $5 million a year for the next 3 years. And that's probably going to take us to the parity point of EVs and gas cars or ICE cars. So I know it's a big scaled down bill from what we originally were looking at last year, but some of the monies, I think it makes more sense for some of the monies that are in the CEF fund, which is where the money would come from, to go toward other things. So does anybody have any questions on that? Is everybody okay with that? Or are there any questions on that?
Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
That sounds good. Can you explain what you mean by parity with ICE cars?
So in the next probably year to 18 months, there's going to be, I mean, you've already seen them just in the last 2 weeks. Hyundai's come out with a new line that's going to be just the EV line. General Motors has come out with 2 more vehicles. There's going to be pickup trucks coming on the market, which will also be addressed in the bill. There'll be more cars. There'll be more cars coming out as well. And I think probably in about 3 years, you're going to see the $20 to $25,000 EVs that will be coming on the market. And at that time, by 2025, the ZEV mandate kind of, we either have to be there or not. So
Okay.
I mean, we can look at this again in 2025, but I think that's where we're going to be.
Great. Thank you
Delegate
so
Love,
There's a lot of exciting cars coming. I know.
That's what we did with the hybrids. We had subsidies for hybrids for a number of years.
Mhm.
Kind of hit an even playing field with the ICE cars, if you will. They're kind of on ICE. And then you fade out the subsidies at that point.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much.
And I think trying to predict the future, I mean, the crystal ball I don't have, but I think it's probably pretty safe to say that within 3 years, you're going to see $25,000, $26,000, $24,000 cars that are competitive. Okay, so everybody's okay with that?
Can I start it off of something?
Sure.
Okay, I think to that end, and I've talked about this with you, gives me a little bit of heartburn offering tax credits for for such high priced cars. Would like to the cost down from where it is now. And David, the subcommittee chair, and I have talked about this, and I just wanted to put that out there for the subcommittee. Where is it now? You said it,
Molly,
what's the price?
It's 73 in the bill.
Right. So I would like to amend it down to 50. But
Do you have that amendment,
open
Molly?
for discussion.
Mr. Chair, can I
Sure.
jump in for a sec?
In Washington County, Martin's Pharmacy, both of those.
Can whoever is on, please mute
Hey,
yourself?
Neil, can you go on mute?
Healthcare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I recall correctly, I mean, we spent a lot of time on the price point last year. Wasn't the price point we chose to get the trucks?
Right.
So we have talked about, do you want to talk about this, David?
Yeah, well, what Delegate Learman and I talked about was like, how do we incentivize, and we talked about this last year, how do we incentivize a new group of vehicles that is coming out, a group of vehicles that is worth literally 3 passenger vehicles, which is the pickup truck market, which, as you saw from last year and this year, is hitting the market in the next 6 months to year. But because they're brand new to the market, just like the cars, when they were brand new, they cost more. So the idea was that we talked about was dropping the MSRP cap for passenger vehicles, which we discussed last year, but leaving the MSRP cap as a carve out simply and only for the pickups, And the reason, again, because, taking one pickup truck off the road is equivalent to 2.5 to 3 passenger vehicles. So leaving a $73,000 tax, an MSRP cap of $73,000 just for the pickup trucks, and then Delegate Learman and I talked about a $55,000.
I thought 50.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that was the answer. That was what we discussed last year, and I think we pretty much had it all in agreement, and then COVID hit. So, but the difference with this one is that the MSRP cap is dropped down for a majority of the vehicles, the passenger vehicles. It's dropped down significantly. Last year, I think we were like at 60 or 63.
Got it.
Can I look, I'm just gonna put this out there. I'm never going to be able to buy or afford any of these cars. So the question becomes, who benefits from this, one, and two, how much do we think people are going to see this tax credit and then decide, of those who can, which is still going to be a small number, to get this credit? Like, I just, like, I get it. I get it totally. But like, when you think about the average individual, this just, I mean, we heard it today jokingly in committee about somebody talking about, all these tax credits for essentially folks who otherwise, the average person is not going to take advantage of buying a car 3 times their budget. I'm just trying to paint the picture. I'm just trying to paint the picture and be honest and have an honest conversation about this.
Sure, and I
who this is actually going to benefit and how many are going to benefit, and then what is the result of that benefit, that either more people than buying cars to then drive down the cost, or essentially for those who can afford it, they just get a tax credit. Like, I just want to understand.
So a couple things. One is the MSRP cap is the top end of 55. So you saw the Arcimoto presentation. Those are starting at $19,000. And as I said, there are going to be more cars in the next, 12 to 18 months that are going to be in the $25,000 price bracket. With a $3,000 tax credit, that drops them down to $22,000. And the feds, the Biden administration is looking very strongly at reinstituting the federal tax credit, which is anywhere from $7,000 to $7,500. So this could affect a lot of people because it could take a $25,000 car and make it about a $15,000 car with the federal and the state tax credits, which helps a lot of people. And that's really where we're trying
Right.
to get.
Okay. So helping a lot of people, but again, let's talk reality. who is going to be buying these cars? Like, I hate to keep pushing that, but the reality is who's buying these cars? Because even if it's affordable, who's to say as the average person, I'm to go out and say, well, you know, here's these tax credits, I'm gonna buy, you know, an electric vehicle. I mean, I'm just really speaking to the fact that sometimes environmentally, we talk about these things, but the average person really doesn't know or understand these things. And so I guess maybe the question is how would we get this information out for someone who maybe wanted to buy it or doesn't know that it exists and could buy it, to then buy it and then take advantage of these credits?
So currently the tax credit on the Maryland side and the federal side, but specifically on the Maryland side, when you go to buy a car, the dealership will tell you if there's a tax credit available for it because they want you to buy the car. Secondly, it's on the MDA website. You can see the tax credits on the MDA website. So there are a lot of opportunities, and I think there's a lot of people that are interested in purchasing an electric vehicle know that there are some tax credits and some opportunities to save money on the car itself. So, I mean, this is the same thing that we've done a version of this bill every couple of years, like 3 or 4 years in a row. I mean, going back, not in a row, but every 3 or 4 years, we do a version of it. We did them for hybrids years ago when hybrids first came out.
It doesn't mean that the
Transition to
question
them,
can't
so-
still be asked. I mean, I'm not trying to say do or not do. I'm just asking the practical questions that would go along with this bill in regards to who would be getting these credits? Like, who are we doing this for? And what has it actually yielded in the past? Like,
I don't know the total the total number of cars. We'd have to do the math, but if you look at it over the years, it's currently there's, I think, 27 or 28,000 EVs on the road in the state of Maryland. So it has probably helped somewhere around 23 to 25,000. Well, that's not accurate. It's people that have applied for it and gotten it because it hasn't been oversubscribed, which is why you have the money in it now to pay back.
I hear you, but
all
if the tax credit didn't really exist, if somebody wants to buy a $50,000 car, $70,000 car, they would just buy it.
Some people might, yeah, but not necessarily everybody. And this is going to help people that are in the $35,000 market. Right now, General Motors sells one for $31,000 without any credits. And as I said, in the next 6 months to year and a half, you're going to see cars in the $25,000 range. And again, with the Biden administration, I think is looking very strongly at reinstituting some of these federal tax credits, which could put people in a car at $15,000, $16,000.
An electric car.
Yeah. Yep. And not only that, but you saw the Arcimoto one that came. I mean, that starts at $19,000.
Ask a question.
Yep, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I answer all your questions, Delegate Boyce?
So I guess I think one other thought behind this, and this is why I appreciate that this is a time-limited tax credit, is when we give tax credits like this, we are subsidizing a price to be higher, right? Because when they price their cars, they take subsidies, they take tax credits like this into account. And so, I think that's why it's important to me that we reduce the price, that the tax credit is applied to, and that we have it sunset. So thank you for working with me on that, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. I'm happy to do so. I think that this will probably, as I said before, I think this will probably be the last one because we'll be pretty close to parity by that point.
I have a question.
Yes, Delegate Keely.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while, and these cars now have been around for a while, and the market is kind of driving the price down a little bit, manufacturing more and more of them. My question is there a resale market for these? What is the drop off when people, like, if they buy one and they decide for whatever reason they want to sell it as a used car? And I just, is it like other cars? Is it the same kind of drop off, or is it like more so, or not much difference?
It completely depends on the market and the manufacturer, but yeah, it's similar in some cases. You know, a car that was purchased new for $50,000 or $60,000 can, you know, be sold on the market for $30,000 or $25,000. They're available now. You can go to cars.com and search up EVs and find EVs anywhere from, you know, I don't know, probably $10,000 or $9,000 all the way up to $100,000, depending on what you want to do, depending on what your market is. But yeah, they're like regular cars. You buy them, you drive them, people get bored, they sell them, and people buy them.
Yeah, and then I'm just thinking about, so that gets more of them on the road, right? I mean, people buy the, I mean, if they, I haven't bought a new car since I bought a Gremlin in 1974. Okay, so we've always gotten used cars, even so. I think the used car market for these, can you use these credits to buy a used car?
No,
No.
you can't.
Why not?
Because the ZEV mandate does not prescribe that. The MOU that was signed in 2011 says they have to be newly registered vehicles in the state of Maryland. I actually tried. Patrick drafted up an amendment a couple of years ago. I think it was maybe last year or the year before, because I thought it would be great to give them to used vehicles. And that's what the MOU is. And then with that said, people came to me and said, well, if they're buying the used vehicle, then the used vehicle is to some degree, they're taking advantage of the original credit as well, because it's cheaper than it originally would have been. So
I could end up giving the credit on the same vehicle 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
So I don't see the problem with that. That get more people into the market buying them and gets more of them on the road. That's all. But
Well, the idea is to get 300,000 on the road by 2025. And if we're not giving the credit to new ones, we're not adding new cars into the mix.
Can I ask another question when you're done?
okay, go ahead. I'm done.
What part of the CEF is it just from the CEF general fund, or is it from the APs, or do you know where?
My understanding is it's from the CEF general fund. Maggie McIntosh was the one that worked it out.
Okay, thanks.
And she used to do this when she was the chair of environmental matters. So I
Okay,
think we have some
thanks.
familiarity with it. Sure. Were there any other questions or concerns with any of the amendments? Patrick, did I miss any of the amendments?
Well, we took out all of that governor's budget stuff on the low and moderate income. That's just out.
Right,
That's got nothing to do with this bill. We should never put it in.
right. So the only amendments that we have to do is Brooks' $55,000 MSRP cap, the car.
Is there a reason that it should be 55 instead of 50?
Because that's what you and I talked about, and that's what you said.
Oh, no, I had sent this to Patrick a while ago and drafted it. I shared it with you.
No, I mean, originally, years ago, there was no MSRP cap. And then years ago, I think it was Vaughn Stewart's in subcommittee was like, we should have a cap. And everybody said, yeah, you know what, we should have a cap. And then we set it at 63. And then it's just been dropping ever since. So
Sure. Okay. I mean, it's fine with me. It doesn't. I was just curious if there were some cars that were between 50 and 55 that it would make a difference. That's why I was curious. But
well, the latest ones, like I said, on the Bolt, the Chevy Bolt is, I think it's starting at 31,000, and then they have an EUV, which I think is 34,000. And then, they just kind of go up from there depending on what you want to get. The Mustang Mach-E, I think, is starts at 45 and probably goes to somewhere around 55, somewhere in that price range. And the Teslas start at 35 or 36 and go up from there.
got it. Okay. Whatever. Yeah. I just think there needs to be some lower price point besides 73. So.
Well, the 73, again, the 73 is just to try to help stimulate the pickup truck market. That's all it is. And I think that it's difficult to define, and I'm open to any suggestions because I've talked with Patrick about this. The issue with the pickup trucks is, again, like taking one pickup truck, like one Ford F-150 or F-250 off of the market is substantial because it's worth 2.5 to 3 passenger vehicles, depending on what that vehicle is, and to try to help stimulate that. But I'm not quite sure, and Patrick and I have kind of struggled with how to define that and how to do it. So if there's any suggestions.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
An idea just hit. So again, it just seems I'm going to give a tax credit to someone who could usually afford a $73,000 car, for instance, to say the top of the cap. Why isn't something like this, why isn't a credit given by income versus the price of the car?
I don't know.
The idea is
It's
to
just
get cars onto the road.
I get that, but again, the point is, it's now I'm questioning who are we really working for, right? It's like I'm creating a credit to help the industry get cars on the road for people who otherwise know about the new kind of like technology as well as can afford it. And so we're giving tax credit to entice people who sure can afford probably this full price to get on the road, but we want other people to, I don't know, I'm just curious again about, is this just us being an extension of marketing to get people who otherwise can pay the higher prices to buy them and get them on the road? Is that what I'm like?
I mean, the only thing that I would say is that I think everybody knows that the #1 source of greenhouse gases right now is the transportation industry. That's it. Like, if you want to look at what's polluting the most, if you want to look at what's getting into people's lungs the most, if you want to look at what's causing the most greenhouse gases and climate change, it's the transportation industry.
Okay.
So this country gives away over $100 billion a year in the fossil fuel industry. They give them these massive grants. So, like, for example, when Delegate Fisher was here today testifying on his bill, what he didn't tell you, he tried to make it sound like it was a level playing field. What he didn't tell you is that if you wanted to make it a level playing field, then people should probably be spending $7 or so for a gallon of gas. But they don't. And the reason they don't
Sure.
is because the federal government just plows billions, $100 billion a year into the fossil fuel industry. So I guess my response would be, if we want to level the playing field, we have to find a way to help transition to electric vehicles. And that's what this has traditionally done, is try to help transition to electric vehicles. And every time somebody buys one, eventually they sell it. Like, I have an electric vehicle, but I bought it used because I couldn't afford to buy it new. And there were a lot of people just buy them used.
Case in point.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time,
I mean,
paid
it's
less for it.
case in point. It's
Yeah,
case in
but
point. And what I guess the argument, I'm not trying to shoot down the bill or kill the bill. I guess the point I'm making is I'm just questioning who this is really for and who are we trying to get to drive more of these vehicles. If in fact, yes, greenhouse gases, us driving cars, but the average person, and I think sometimes we forget this, the average person is not reading up on how much their car pollutes. They're looking for a car to get from A to B. They want something that is reliable. They want something that the gas mileage is going to be good. And so I'm just trying to talk practically and just talk. I'm just trying to have a practical conversation about this.
Right. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I
Okay.
think that,
That's fine.
But I think that's also, I think there are valid points on both sides, right? And that's why this is a time limited bill, right? Is that fair to say? Like, we're not going to do this forever, because
Correct.
Delegate
Right.
Boyce's point is completely 100% accurate. And your point, Delegate, or Mr. Chair, is accurate, right? And so that's why this is not something that we are saying this is going to be the policy of the General Assembly forever. This is a short incentive that will then go away. Would you say is that fair, Mr. Chair?
I think that's very fair. Thank you, Delegate Learman.
And I think you should know that this money is not like general fund money. This is coming from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, which is mainly funded. Delegate Learman from appropriations might more, but it was like the Volkswagen settlement, and it's earmarked for certain purposes. And there's another big settlement coming in soon too. David, I forget what it is, but But that program can only be used to decrease energy demand and increase energy supply to promote affordable, reliable, and clean energy in Maryland. So this money is not like general fund money. It is earmarked for these specific purposes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what's strategic energy investment fund. So, all right, is there any, I guess the only other thing, Patrick, that you and I talked about, which I don't know if the subcommittee wants to talk a little bit about, is, if there's a really kind of a way to define or carve out just specifically those pickups, or I don't know if you have a thought as far as weight is concerned. I know we had this conversation last year.
The problem with weight is that, doing it by class, which is done by weight often, would be the easiest. The problem is that these ZEVs are actually heavier than normal cars and don't fit into the traditional classes. That's one of the problems. So I would say, let me take a crack at bifurcating that.
Okay.
And then when we have something in front of us, we can discuss it next week.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, let's move to House Bill 383, red light cameras, vehicle rental. This is Delegate
Oh,
Carr's bill.
I'm sorry, quick question. Did we need to adopt Delegate Williams' amendment?
Well, there are going to be a bunch of amendments, I think.
Oh, okay.
So why don't we just
This
wait
is
till
going to
next?
be part of my bifurcation.
Okay, so let's
Yeah,
just wait. Let's just
Patrick, if you
adopt
look
them.
them all up.
Do you think you could send them around before the hearing? I mean, you usually do this, but you can just send them around before the hearing next week. So we can
Sure.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, but just to Delegate Boyce's point, so we're going to work on these amendments based on the conversation we had here. Okay, great. Okay, the next bill, House Bill 383, that's Delegate Carr's bill. We've had a lot of conversation about this bill. I have talked with Delegate Carr about the idea of withdrawing the bill, and I haven't heard back from him. He was
Move favorable.
Second.
okay. Is there any conversation?
Bonds get paid back.
Okay, all those in favor of the unfavorable signify by saying aye.
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 Goes into pay that off.
Any opposed?
And in the
All right.
Nobody opposed? Did I miss anybody?
going into that program, pay off Camden Yards, and now that's starting to wind.
Whoever has something running in the background, if you could please turn it down, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Neil.
Is that you, Neil? Please.
Very nice, Delegate Jacobs.
Okay.
Nice cup. We
Yeah.
should all get them.
House Bill 564, automated traffic enforcement, implementing agencies, Montgomery County delegation. This is the bill that all of you probably know. I missed the first half of it because I was in another committee in a bill hearing that had to do with AAA and had to do with transitioning cameras from the police department to the Department of Transportation in Montgomery County. I think this is a good bill to have a conversation with. I think the AAA is here. I don't know who else is here. And let's just open it up for conversations because I know it was kind of controversial. Any questions?
Mr.
on
Chair,
the
this
bill?
is a local bill, correct?
It is a local bill.
Do we have a letter from the delegation?
I think we do, don't we?
Yes,
Patrick? We should, yeah.
yes.
It is local, but it also is setting a new precedent because nobody's ever done this before.
That's correct. Not
So-
in Maryland, anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not the same kind of local bill.
I think I think that Montgomery County would disagree and say that it is the same kind of local.
I'm sure they would, but it does set a precedent and we look at it a little differently. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean we won't go along with it, but it's just another thought.
I guess we could say that about any of the hunting bills. The first one was followed by many, many more. It set a precedent, so it doesn't.
Correct. So we take a little more time talking about it. That's all.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. If there's no specific questions, I can just have AAA say what they have to say. I know I see them here.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much for giving us and affording us the opportunity to speak. As Delegate Healy said a moment ago, it sets a precedence, and that's what we're concerned about. As you said a moment ago, Chairman, there are programs there are jurisdictions across the country that have done this transfer. One, of course, is the District of Columbia. But as we pointed out in a hearing 2 weeks ago, the Department of Transportation was already controlling and making the decision and was in the driver's seat. And essentially, the police department was rubber stamping the program in the District of Columbia. Our concern is that there's no study or no empirical evidence or data that shows that this would improve traffic safety or the concerns that many have expressed in Montgomery County. It's all anecdotal, and I'm not trying to be rude or crude. The fact of the matter is that it is a talking point for Vision Zero proponents. But as Council Member Mary Shea, who's the chairman of the Transportation and Environment Committee for the District of Columbia, for the council, pointed out, that they're misreading the data. They're, for example, extrapolating data from Chicago and from New York City. But in those jurisdictions, the police department never ran the program. And so to say that you'll have these outcomes if transportation departments were to run the program and you have a seamless program has no empirical evidence that it improves anything. Our concern too is that Montgomery County has the finest automated traffic enforcement program in the nation. It is the gold standard. And we don't say that cavalierly or said with anything except truth. And I think that it would diminish the program. It is also the gold standard for the state of Maryland. And I can tell you, looking at the 45 automated traffic enforcement programs, we look at them every year. We review the reports. And you will be appalled if you were to go to traffic court and see what you see in Maryland. And this gets to what Delegate Healy was just talking about. For example, in some jurisdictions, you have automated traffic enforcement cameras in school zones, but there's no school in the school zone. You have in the state of Maryland, red light cameras that are set up that don't ticket people for running red lights, but you can incur a ticket simply because you stopped in a crosswalk, but you never ran a red light. And so we see so many excesses in the program, so many things that are done wrong, that we think that this should be done and conducted by police departments, not by vendors and not by the private sector, but by law enforcement, because it is a law enforcement activity. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm sorry. That was Delegate Boyce.
Okay, so I guess I'm confused. So, I mean, I know the Department of Transportation, and in some cases, police departments have officers specifically assigned to transportation. I don't know if this is the case for Montgomery County, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is the kind of splitting of the workload. And I know some officers, for instance, in areas where there's a lot of traffic, whether it's the speed monitoring or a lot of those systems are being managed by the police departments and they cannot manage them and they end up managing them incorrectly. So I guess I'm questioning why not have them help manage it and take some of the burden off of the police department so they can actually do what they're supposed to do? Just a question.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking anybody who'd like to answer.
Oh,
Well, let me, my understanding, Patrick, please jump in. Or actually, Sarah, if you want to jump in. I mean, my understanding is basically what this does is takes the whole processing of all of this from the police department to the Department of Transportation. So your question is there a hybrid solution? Is that what your question is?
I guess my question is his concern. I understand the concern, because it's not necessarily a private industry. It's still the local government, but a different branch of the government managing these systems so that the police aren't, inundated with potentially managing it.
Yes, Delegate Boyce, the concern is that the current state law dictates or mandates that a sworn law enforcement officer has to sign off on the tickets and approve the tickets.
So,
And that's what this bill would change.
so couldn't they still manage it and still have as the body confirming these tickets and then have the police department stamp them as a way of transparency?
That could happen, but this bill specifically requires civilians at the Department of Transportation to have that authority.
Yep.
You understand what I'm trying to say is there's specific language in the bill that was, so we have as
Can
part
you
of
point to a page and a line in the bill where you're speaking of so we can be on par with you? And then I think I'm gonna let my colleague Delegate Love take over because I think looks like she's got the answer.
Yeah, to Delegate Boyce's point, this came out of Montgomery County, and Delegate Love happened to be the chair of that subcommittee. So she can speak on this bill probably almost better than anybody here. So Delegate Love, please, Calgon, please take it away.
Thank you. Delegate Boyce, I think I heard two different parts to your question, and I apologize if I heard them wrong. The first part I thought I heard was one of the things that we talked about is relieving some of this from law enforcement, because it's Mr. Townsend calls it a law enforcement action, but part of the discussion was they're signing a ticket from a camera. There are things like, catching murderers and all of that they need to be out in traffic enforcement where they need to be there for speeders and that sort of stuff. So one of the discussions was very much, taking this off of law enforcement's plate and putting it into Montgomery County Department of Transportation to integrate it with the Vision Zero program. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
And may I say, the specific language in the introduction of the bill reads that requires that an employee of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, instead of a law enforcement officer, sign a certain required statement on a citation issued through the use of automated traffic enforcement systems in Montgomery County. And that is what will change the entire statewide law. And the reason that law exists is because under the Speed Camera Reform Act that Delegate Keely, I think, was on this committee when that was passed several years ago, as well as Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, they were co-sponsors of the bill. I know that this delegate was. And because of the concerns that happened in Baltimore City, where we had a situation where a deceased police officer had signed tickets some 4 to 5 weeks after he was dead. We had cases in Maryland where there were tickets issued to vehicles, including a AAA tow truck that was literally parked on the street and not moving. And so the reform came about because of concerns about excesses in the system.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
So this is what I would say. I think that going back historically is important to a degree. I know when I first came here, Delegate Malone was the chair of the Motor Vehicle Subcommittee, and if you brought up anything about speed cameras, he just basically would put his hand up and like, don't talk to me about speed cameras, because it was such a contentious issue when they finally got everything passed the way they wanted. And as far as he was concerned, we were never, ever going to address speed cameras again. But that was, what, 6 or 7 years ago. So Delegate Love?
Yeah, I had a question. Mr. Townsend, moments ago, you talked about the problems of excesses across Maryland. And yet the law in Maryland is that law enforcement has to sign the ticket. So now you're saying we can't change it in Montgomery County where the delegation has voted to change it because law enforcement has to sign it. So your argument doesn't make sense to me. And I'm wondering if you can explain how the excesses in Maryland support your argument when they're being signed by law enforcement, because that just doesn't make any sense to me.
That's a good question, Delegate Love. What I'm saying is two different things about two different issues. One is that if we were to, this is to address what Delegate Keely, I'm not trying to put words in her mouth. She's very.
Please don't. I'm going to respond to this in a minute.
Yeah, she's very
forewarned,
articulate.
John. Be careful, tread carefully.
But the point I think she underscores is the one that we have underscored, that if you pass this.
Carl, can you thank
Carl.
you? Go ahead, Mr. Townsend.
Yes, that if you were to pass this bill, our concern is that other jurisdictions would ask for copycat legislation. When I talk about the excesses in the program, I'm not talking about any excesses in the Montgomery County program, which is the finest program in the state and perhaps the finest in the nation. I'm talking about what's already occurring in the state of Maryland and smaller jurisdictions because of the heavy hand of the
Mr.
private
Townsend, I'm going to
sector.
jump in right there. I'm going to interrupt you right there because that's what I'm trying to get at. The state law says it has to be signed by law enforcement.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And now you're talking about there are excesses in Maryland where
Yes,
they're
but-
being signed by law enforcement.
Right,
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about two different things, ma'am. What I'm talking about is that in many jurisdictions, it is the vendor that runs the program and the vendor that makes the decision about where cameras are put. And so if you have civilians who are signing tickets and other civilians who are in the private sector who have a vested interest in deciding where the cameras go, then you have a corrupt program.
Okay.
That's
Mr. Townsend, did you, because I came in about 3/4 of the way through the bill hearing. When this was at the county level as a local bill, did AAA, because I've heard on both sides of this, did AAA testify on this bill?
We asked to testify on the bill, and that the morning of the hearing, we were told they're only going to hear from Montgomery County witnesses, meaning official witnesses, meaning Captain, the police department, but not from us. So we submitted a written testimony that was circulated to the committee.
Okay. So I guess so you didn't actually verbally testify, you just put in written testimony.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Only written.
Delegate Love, did you
only
run
written
that
testimony.
hearing? Is that?
I don't recall any request by AAA to come in and talk to my local committee.
Okay, that's, all right. Delegate Keely.
Yeah, I do want to weigh in. I really just wanted to hear the discussion because I think when I said that it's not a local bill in the traditional sense, I meant that you need to make the case of it on the merits of the policy and not just because it's from a local government, which we do a lot of things in local government that way. But this is a new concept. I believe that after listening to the conversation that, time has passed. You're right. 7 years since
Jimmy.
at least. And people have adjusted to everything, the way these programs are working throughout the state. And I think this is a good time for us to consider new actions in this area. I was there on the committee with when Jimmy Malone was the chair, vice chair of the committee and chair of the motor vehicle subcommittee through all the years where the bill came in and went out and never got passed until finally it was passed. And Montgomery County was basically grandfathered most of the things that they had in their own, and that is the precedent. They did the first program and it went statewide after a lot of work. And And I don't think it ever would have gone statewide if Montgomery County hadn't done it in the first place. It's become accepted. It has changed behavior. It's made the school zone safer. So I think people are ready to have a new look at it. And I don't have any problem with treating this as a local courtesy at this time. I just wanted to have the conversation.
Okay. That's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Delegate Healy, for that explanation. I appreciate that.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Okay. Is
Mr.
there a
Chair,
motion?
if we're
Yep.
ready, I would like to move favorable.
Okay, is there a second? Is that a
Can
second
I-
or a question?
I do have a quick question because I was going to ask the same thing, but I just, a question of point of order. And if someone can point this into the bill, if the concern is that legislatively, law says that the bill has to be signed by an officer, couldn't the Department of Transportation in Montgomery County still do all the work and then just have an officer stamp it?
I would,
I mean, it's kind of like I approve time cards all the time, but someone above me has to make the final stamp of approval. It doesn't do anything for me unless they have to find an audit and find out I was paying Delegate Healy, extra money. But I guess the point I'm making is if he is uncomfortable because he's saying we are essentially, it sounds like what he's saying is that we're not following the actual law that says an officer must sign the ticket. But if that's the case, the officer can sign the ticket after they've been vetted by DOT.
Patrick?
Well, the current law says that, because this law applies for counties and municipalities. And the current law says that not all municipalities have police departments. And if a municipality
That's true.
doesn't have a police department, then they can get a contract law enforcement officer to do their sign-offs. In which case, I assume they usually get county officers to do overtime or something like that. But yes, that type of thing can be done, but Montgomery's already done their bill like this. We don't.
Sure.
we don't
No, I'm just
typically amend
asking. I
all
mean,
those.
he keeps saying
We already
it,
do that
so-
as the answer. We already do that as the answer for the municipal.
Okay, so I'm not, so I guess I'm not sure what he's not sure about. I mean, I'm happy to move favorable.
Okay, so is that a second? Okay, all those in favor of the favorable signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moves forward. Thank you. HB 947 MTA, fair program for opioid treatment, patient modifications, Delegate Wells. I really love to chat about this bill because I was out again in another bill hearing, so I didn't hear this bill. Patrick, can you give us a quick, I'm gonna look it up.
Well, this bill, right now, the bill that passed this committee and passed the General Assembly last year required the administration to make available to opioid treatment programs monthly transit passes for use by their patients. And then they allowed them to issue them on site. This bill requires the administration to allow them to certify eligibility and issue the identification cards for use on the transit systems. And that is apparently a different can of worms.
What do you mean?
Well, according to testimony, you've got a whole bunch of systems and a whole bunch of privacy concerns and the like. And they're saying it cost them a ton of money.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Oh, sorry, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Delegate Boyce.
Delegate
Okay.
Boyd?
No, go.
Thank you. Patrick, obviously my radar just went off. Can you talk to me? Because I haven't read
Yeah, me
what
too.
you're talking about. What privacy concerns are we talking about?
HIPAA limit what can go back and forth between the transit agency and the treatment centers.
Oh, okay.
Very personal data.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I thought I understood it that as me think about this, as the kind of the agency, the organization, they could purchase the bus passes at the discounted fee and then sell them to their customers at that same price. So in other words, removing the barrier of them getting that by them having that, but purchasing them at the disability discount.
I believe that's the current law based on the bill passed last year.
So why?
This bill says the administration shall allow, the Maryland Transit Administration shall allow opioid treatment programs to certify eligibility and issue identification cards.
So the question is the certification to some degree, right? How is one certified? How's that data kept? Are you finished, Delegate Boyce? Delegate Parrot?
Yeah, I guess to Delegate Boyce's point, is the system working now or is it not working at all? Like if it's working right now, I don't see why we need to change it. But if no one's getting any help, then it seems like we might want to change it. Does anyone know?
I recall Delegate, and I could be off, but I think I recall Delegate Wells saying it's not working. Am I wrong in that? Does anybody else remember that?
The only thing I will say is looking at the community testimony, it looks like it's all favorable. So if we'd like, I can have a conversation with the bill sponsor to try to, kind of put the pieces of the puzzle back together, and we can go.
Well, that's because our agencies don't testify and take positions anymore. This is one of those letter of information in opposition.
Sometimes that should go back to bite them if they refuse to tell us what they really think.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big problem. I've said it before. It's a really big problem when Maryland taxpayers pay for people to do jobs, and part of their jobs are to advise us on policy, and they're just not advising us on policy because the governor just doesn't want them to advise us on policies. It's really a disservice to the Maryland taxpayer because it's harder for us to make an informed decision if we don't have the experts' opinions.
And we make poor decisions because of it, I think, personally.
Oh, Delegate, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, again, I think to also to Delegate Parrot's point, I thought it was about also removing the barrier. Since they're in treatment or at treatment, they can get the bus pass through the treatment center as well. And I thought that was the kind of like removing the barrier or having to go get it. It's a place downtown, you can go get it. I used to get a whole bunch of them. They're like a bag of nickels, but then we would give them away because we've already paid for them. But in this case, remember I asked about something and the gentleman's like, no, we're paying for our own bus pass. We're just, having them help certify us to get it rather than there's a very long, lengthy process for the individual to fill out to kind of prove their disability, that to show that they're getting SSI, it's all these other things. But if they could certify these individuals rather than, potentially in a bunch, in a group versus someone trying to fill out that paperwork themselves to the point of barrier and to the point of Delegate Parrot's what's not working. What's not working is it's just a lot of paperwork to just say that I want to buy a bus pass, but I have a disability that allows me to have a discount. So I don't see why they can't certify it. And so Patrick, what is the HIPAA issue that they're telling the MBA or the MTA that they're disabled when they would do that themselves if they fill out the form themselves?
Something like that. The information flowing one way or the other, possibly both, it's not allowed.
Even if the patient gave permission to the opioid center to do so?
I'm not a HIPAA expert, but I believe that permission generally makes things okay, but I'm not a HIPAA expert.
So could we potentially add something that said per permission of the patient?
Let's talk to the sponsors and the MTA. The MTA probably should be here.
Yeah, they should.
It should be, we
need MTA.
Yeah, they were actually supposed to be here from last week. They're they're not here, but they were supposed to be here from that list of questions on Delegate Crim's bill. So
So that's MDTA.
MDTA. So let's
Different.
hold this bill and have a conversation with the bill sponsor to try and get some answers to some of these questions. If anybody has some specific questions, can you either send them to me and Patrick, and then we'll sit down with Melissa and try and figure out what we need to do. And I'm sorry, Delegate Jacobs, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Well, I definitely have concerns about the HIPAA issue, but you know, in the motor vehicle testimony, they were talking about a $2 million fiscal cost, and then the fiscal note, it says expenditures increased significantly. So, I mean, what's the number there? I think we need motor vehicles in to talk about some of these numbers, because, you know, significantly, what's that mean
Right.
in real dollars? Because
So we'll have them next week
saying
too.
2 million somewhere else, but the HIPAA issue, I think, is a big one. You know, we really need to make sure of that one.
Okay, well, we'll hold it and we'll make sure that they're here next week. We'll talk with Delegate Wells. Any other questions or outstanding issues? I just took some quick notes. Okay.
Yeah, I just have one quick thing. In the Maryland Department of Transportation MTA testimony, it looks like one of their concerns is about potential fraud and so forth. There's a whole list of things that they seem to be concerned about. Receiving duplicate IDs, improper access to card making materials, sharing information without permission. Although, I mean, there seems to be a concern about losing control of the process, I think. If they can't, it seems to me they should be able to enter into some kind of memorandum of understanding. There can't be that large a number of people that would use this, that are in these programs. It can't be that many. So it just seems like there ought to be a way for them to work it out between themselves. And if they can't, then maybe we do need legislation. And I fully support working with the sponsor to see what we can do.
Yeah, and MTA needs to be here. And I am just.
I sent her a message as well.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair.
I sent a Delegate Wells a message as well.
Thank you, Regina.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Delegate Love.
Sorry, I know we're going to hold this, so I'm sorry to prolong it, but to Delegate Jacobs' point, I was just reading the fiscal note. What MTA is saying is that the treatment centers are going to have to get their own printing facilities. So that they can print, and it says they need their own printing equipment and related supplies at an estimated cost of $5,000 to $10,000 per opioid treatment program. So there seems to be a disconnect here from them saying that the treatment centers are going to print their own cards, and our conversation of why don't they buy them from MTA to be able to give out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. Yep.
So I think they're making it more complicated than it needs to be.
Well, the disconnect, I think, is that I think the current law says that they're supposed to be buying them from MTA and giving them out. But there's something in that process that's not working. And
Okay.
maybe that's what we got to figure out.
So we'll get MTA here.
Next week.
Yeah, we'll get MTA here next week. Okay, so we're going to hold that. Next one is HB 964. Delegate Parrot, a very, very new twist to this existing bill for years and years and years and years. Let's have a discussion on this. I will say that after the bill hearing, I got a picture of one of the members of our committee standing in front of a sign that says "Left lane is for passing." So I'm going to show it to everybody. So to some degree, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I did talk with you, Delegate Parrot. I'm just trying to figure out, I can really appreciate that this is a new way of working this bill, but given what I just showed you, I don't know, members of the subcommittee, do you have questions?
Is that sign enforceable?
No, but either would Delegate Parrots.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be enforceable.
So coming from the shore, all right, it is ridiculous how in the left-hand lane, people just set up camp and roll about 50 miles an hour in the left-hand lane. And we only have 2 lanes, so it's not like we have extras. You know, we don't get the cool stuff that y'all get on this side of the bridge with lane expansion. We don't get those cool things. You know, anytime y'all want to cancel some lanes, we'll take them.
All right,
Bring
you
them
can
to us.
have them because we don't
I'll
want
take
them.
them. You can put 5 lanes on
farmland.
Route
That's
50.
farmland. You can't build in that
Come on.
farmland.
Hey, I'll grow corn in my backyard. We're good. Let's go. Because without bills, you know, fixing this, the congestion issue is never going to go away because you have no flow of traffic going from Prairie to Ocean City. Should be a 20-minute ride. It's 40 minutes. Sometimes.
If you can't enforce it, what good is it?
Yeah, I
What's
guess
that?
that's what I would say. I have sat behind those vehicles, Delegate. I just don't think that this bill is not enforceable.
Okay, well, let's
like
find
there-
something that is.
There are people who are just going to do that, like that, because
Right.
that's how they drive. And I just don't think the law is going to.
Yeah, I
About-
think the problem is the opposite happens. And it
Yes.
happened to me actually last
It's
Friday.
over-enforced.
Leaving
Yeah.
here, I'm in the left lane. I just happened to be in the left lane. I think I was going 60 and somebody was riding my bumper
Sorry about that.
highway. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what? I need to get over. As soon as I got over,
Yeah, it's not safe.
they zipped. It's not safe. So
You did the right thing. You did the right thing.
Yeah, but the other thing too is that I get rammed in the back. I mean, I get his point. I do worry about it, that it's not enforceable.
You did the right thing. You did what you're supposed to do. I do that
let's-
too. I get out of the way and let them go.
Let's back up for a second. So the current version of the bill, there's still no enforcement mechanism. It just says that the state's going to undergo a policy of putting these signs up, which the state already does. So
Well,
Let's
let me
put
just clarify.
stronger worded signs.
let me finish. Hold on a second. So that's my understanding. So please correct me if I missed something. Tell the committee the subcommittee how it's different from last year.
So I'm only aware of those signs existing when you're going up a hill. Basically trying to get the trucks is what the real message is for. But I haven't seen these all across the state, and certainly not on I-70 in the area. So this is going to instruct the state highway to put more signs out and also to use the dynamic message signs, which they've not ever used. You see them put your mask on and a whole bunch of other stuff, but you've never seen a message saying, hey, keep to the right if you're driving slower. So this would be, basically it's an education effort. And what are happening right now, people from Maryland, they're going to driving in other states. Almost half the other states, you can get pulled over and get a ticket just for that reason. This is going to educate Maryland drivers. This is really what the appropriate behavior. Correct, it doesn't have a ticket associated with it, but it will provide that education that is not happening right now.
Okay, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Parrot knows I love this bill and I want this bill and I've wanted it for years because slow drivers in the left-hand lane make me crazy. And like
Really?
you,
They make you crazy.
If I'm the slow one, I will move over and they'll fly by and I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to
Right.
move over. That's what's supposed to happen. The challenge in the past and why Delegate Parrot has really watered this down is that there has been two sets of opposition. One was the former chair of JPR. And two, there was a lot of concern about bias in policing. So there was a lot of concern that drivers of color would be pulled over more than others, like we have seen in other areas. So Delegate Parrot, to that last piece, have you had a conversation with the chair of the Black Caucus about
Yes.
this?
So
Okay.
on Monday, I presented this bill to the Black Caucus. Now, they haven't responded with results. I actually didn't ask them to be favorable on it. I just asked them to be neutral. And so I don't really expect to hear anything. And I think someone can correct me. I haven't heard back from them. So that might mean they're neutral, it might not. But I did present it to them on Monday.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anything else, Delegate Love?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Delegate Anderton.
So this is for rural areas, like our areas. not the 95 corridor. It says here rural areas, right?
Yes, Delegate, you're right. Right now, the bill has rural areas only. The
Right.
reason for that was when the state highway first went to 65 miles per hour.
Right.
They did it just in the rural areas first.
And sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't object to making it all 95, all over. But I thought it might be a little more.
Yeah, I think if you have more than 2 lanes, I don't think it's needed as much as the 2-lane highways where you don't have that room to maneuver. I mean, like when I'm out here on 50, quite honestly, I can be in the left-hand lane and I can see a path to get all the way to the right to get off and vice versa, swooping through. You can't really do that on the 2-hand or the 2-lane highways. Now, and this is just signage. It's not enforcing. It's not pulling people over or anything. It's just
No, it's not.
signage. It's just a baby step saying, hey, are you aware that your behind should be in the right-hand lane if you're going slow? So there's not any way for signage to be selective. It's, you can either read or you can't, So I would have a hard time with it because, I can't read good, or spell or can't. But for those that can, it should be no problem.
But
So-
you dress good.
You know it. That's what I got one thing. That's it.
So it is.
Can I
it is-
clarify
it is a
one
very
thing?
Heavily, it is.
Can I clarify one thing?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
There is a penalty with this bill.
Oh, it is?
There's a requirement to drive to the right-hand lane. And if you don't do that, you are subject to a maximum $500 fine. Now, the reason Delegate Parrot is saying this, and I understand this, is because you are required, if you're driving slower than the general speed of traffic, you're required to move over if practical as determined by the driver. Police officer's never going to write you a ticket for that.
No.
Go into court, say, I thought I
It'd be
could.
thrown out. Yeah, it'd be thrown out.
Judge will throw it out.
What they thought is practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in practice, yes, there is no penalty. But technically, legally, there is.
Are you saying that is existing law, that there's a penalty because it's not in this bill?
Well, if there's no penalty specified in the transportation article, it's a maximum $500 fine.
But but that's already an existing law because in this bill,
Right.
it doesn't. Okay.
It doesn't.
Yeah, most of our motor vehicle bills don't have a penalty in them. And the maximum 500 applies. But practically, you're right. There's no way anyone's ever going to get a ticket for this.
I did have an amendment drafted, because someone did ask about the bicycle helmet law, and the kids can only get a warning. This might take care of that whole $500 issue. If we say that basically the penalty would be a warning, and you can only get the warning if you're pulled over for something else. That's basically what the amendment would say.
Like you said, you'll have precedent for that in the statute, because you're right, the bicycle helmets for kids does say that.
I don't know. I can tell you the number. Would that help you, the amendment number?
Yes.
It's 923-627/1.
Okay.
And Delegate Harrison, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes, I appreciate the conversation. I especially appreciate, the rural areas and the 2-lane roads. I guess I would just remind us that the speed limits are posted there because it has been determined that that is the safe rate of speed to go. And, while I realize that people often drive faster than the speed limit, but if you have everybody driving faster than the speed limit, then you potentially set up a dangerous situation. And so, if the speed limit, posted speed limit is 65, and every, I guess the person in the right lane is going 70, but you want to, and the person in the person in the left lane is going 65, which is the speed limit. Then all of that, I just want us to remember that this is really about safety. The posted speed limits are about safety. And when everybody starts driving 80 in a 65 mile per hour speed limit zone, regardless if it's 2 lanes or 4 lanes, then you could potentially set up a major problem with a major safety problem. And I just want us to keep that in our minds. And yeah, so and I'll leave it there.
If I could talk to
Why don't
that.
what I'm thinking on this bill is that I'd like to have a couple of conversations. One probably with JPR and another with the Black Caucus, and
Okay.
and then kind of see where it goes. Does anybody have any other questions or thoughts? I just want to kind of cross those.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
Delegate
do.
Healy.
Yeah, I agree with Delegate Harrison that, I mean, it's always disturbed me when we've seen these bills on the floor. They often get killed on the floor. I've seen it happen many times when we've had dealt with this kind of issue. And the committee involved, it was long before Environmental Matters had this kind of subject matter. But the problem is that you want to tell people that they have to speed to stay in the left lane.
Yeah.
And so you're telling them they have to break the law in order to not break the law. And it doesn't make any sense. So if the speed limit is 65 and you're in the left lane and you're going 65 or 67 and the rest of all the other traffic is going 80, you're not breaking the law, they are. But the situation is dangerous. And this is the dilemma that it always presents.
Right. And it is, especially because it's all about that time distance to close that you're closing. And if you're going 65 and somebody else is coming up behind you at 75 or 80, you may end up getting rear-ended if you don't get out of the way. So it's just a question of safety. Delegate Jacobs.
I was in the whole conversation, we've been talking about this for years, but with virtually no penalty in this, there's really no harm, no foul. If you do the signage and try to convince the state to do some of it on the electronic signs, and find it later that we need to put some teeth in, you can always do that in a later piece of legislation. But
right,
I think it's
makes sense.
To push people, I'll tell you, over on the shore, they don't all drive the speed limit in the left lane.
Yeah, they don't do it on 270 either. You'll get run.
There's many of them that are not driving the speed limit, and we have a saying over on the shore, just for the people from the Western Shore, they're out walking their cars. That's what we say.
Well, just so you know, Delegate Jacob, if you're going down 270 or up 270 in rush hour, and you're in that lane and traffic is moving, which happens more now because of COVID, but pre-COVID, if you're not doing 70 miles an hour, you are going to get run right. It's going to be really dangerous. They fly down that, and that's a 55-mile-an-hour zone. Okay, is there any more conversation on this bill, or I'm going to make those 2 phone calls between now and next week, and then we can vote on it next week?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're trying to do, especially with the signage and just making people aware that, be aware of your surroundings is really what it is. And
right.
But I just, I am concerned about the rate of speed, and and we all saw it when everyone was home, and you go out on the road to try to drive, you would literally get run over. I don't care what lane you were in, because everything, was open, come down 50. And the speed is just so great that it makes little old ladies like me nervous. So.
Okay.
No one's calling you. You're not a little lady. Come on.
Delegate Parrot, you
It
have
just
the
makes
last
me
word.
lean on my gas pedal.
I guess just to comment
word,
on safety. 29 states do have that law right now where you can get pulled over for driving slower in the left lane. We're just talking about signs, but the reason they have that is it actually does increase safety, because if you have uniform traffic where people on the right are going slower and the left are going faster, that avoids that situation where people are, and you've seen these guys, they're terrible drivers. They dart in and out of people all the way down the road. And that's awful. If we can let them stay in the left lane, get their ticket, drive in over there, but don't weave in and out and like cut people off all the time. That's really hazardous.
Okay.
That should be a crime.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna work on those couple of pieces with Delegate Parrot for next week. And then everybody think about what you want to do so that we can vote up or down next week. And the last bill, we were supposed to have some folks here to answer the questions that we had from last week, and they're not here. So unless
think
anybody
they
has
said-
anything, what's that?
Didn't they send some documentation over today about the process? I saw an email, I opened it, but I didn't really have a chance to.
I haven't had a chance to look at it either. So let's hold the bill again.
I'm
And-
personally ready to move the bill favorably. I don't know.
Which bill is it?
I'm ready to move unfavorable.
Second.
The problem that we have is this bill has a massive fiscal note, and that's like a really big problem.
Yeah.
I've talked to the chair about this bill multiple times.
Yeah. The other issue is that a lot of that money is bonded against, and it's, to repair bridges and tunnels and maintain this. I don't know.
$162 million fiscal note.
Yeah. So let's hold it for next week to get the final answers to these questions, because I think there's been a lot of substantive conversation on this bill that has led us down other roads. No pun intended, but other roads that I think are conversations that we need to have. I have some really big concerns with what's going on with the transition of the contract from one vendor to the next. I think there's obviously a lot of things that are falling through the cracks. And so we'll hold it. We'll talk with them next week. Patrick, we need to make sure that they come next week, and we can.
Well, they did send the answers to the questions.
Yeah, but did they send them today?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little late. So we need to have them here. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you, everyone.